So Paul, here we are again at EPCA in 2013, and I'd like to start off just by asking you what your thoughts are on how the fourth quarter's panning out for European petrochemicals.
Well, it's still a bit early days to get a full picture from talking to everyone after a sort of day of being here, but certainly the people I've been talking to so far not been terribly optimistic about the outlook. The general pattern seems to have been people stocked up in September because they thought there was a chance the oil price could rise because of the Syrian issues. Then, of course, luckily wiser counsels prevailed and Syria hasn't happened in that way, and so the oil price is actually now looking quite weak. So the picture for demand that people are giving me is we've actually got enough for October. In November we're going to be moving to cut back for year-end reasons, and December is always quiet. So really we're looking at January before we see potential for any sustained demand, which is very worrying given that October is normally one of the 3 or 4 strongest months in the year. So if we've already had the surge in demand last month, the fourth quarter is so far, but obviously one hopes we'll have more optimistic views from other people, but so far it's not looking good.
Okay, and just looking ahead into 2014, have you got any calls for optimism?
Well, I think that a lot of people talk about optimism in the way of wishful thinking and what would we like to happen. And we'd all obviously like to get back to the growth of the super cycle years and lots of people buying lots of things, and we'd like the oil price to be low so that people could afford to buy lots of things. I think there's quite a good chance, you and I have discussed this in the past, there's quite a good chance that the oil price will fall. There is absolutely no justification for prices at this level, and I think that is becoming more and more widely understood now. So that will be a positive sign. It would be difficult to manage, obviously. A fall from 100, say, to 50 or to 20 or something would not be easy to manage for a lot of companies. But at least at the end of that tunnel, life would be more affordable. Again, in terms of demand, I can't see any great change. The issue is you've got more and more older people in the European economy, in the Western economy, and of course now in the Chinese economy. So if all of those major regions are getting older, then where is this new demand going to come from?
How about looking even further long term, say looking out into the middle of the century? I mean, some people are very bullish. They see a huge amount of GDP growth combining with population growth, and they're very bullish about the outlook for the chemical sector. What's your outlook in the long term?
I think that's unrealistic. I think that at the end of the day, demand comes from people. It doesn't come from economics or forecasts or anything else. And very clear facts that we know that we have this great benefit of increased life expectancy. So what we're looking at today is a world, just take, if we're looking forward 50 years, let's look back 50 years. In 1950, the average woman in the world had 5 children. Today, the average woman in the world has 2.5 children. Right? So the developing countries are reducing the number of babies they have astonishingly, right? Because in the West, those numbers came down a bit earlier. So the average woman has halved the number of babies she's having in that period. At the same time, and this is largely due to the chemical industry, chlorine in drinking water, food packaging, antiseptics, pharmaceuticals, all of those things, life expectancy has risen 50%. Now, what that means is that you have a wholly new generation of people over the age of 55 who've come into the market for the first time. But if you go back just for a moment to 1900, life expectancy in the West was 46 years. Now, there are countries in the West today, Japan, Italy, Germany, where the median age of the population is 46. This is a fantastic achievement. But in terms of demand, it means that once you get to that kind of age, 45, 50, 55, the kids are leaving home, so you become a replacement society. You don't need a big house. You don't need new kitchens. You don't need new bathrooms. You don't need new cars. Actually, what we see is older people are moving back into cities from the suburbs all over the West. So what does this mean for demand? It means that they become a replacement society. And also, let's not forget, we haven't changed retirement ages at this point. So a lot of people now, an increasing number of people, are going to be living on a state pension. So we're talking in Europe here of 600 euros, say, a month. or $900, something like that, all in. Now, what can you buy with that compared to? Put it another way, if you wanted to have a pension income today equal to average earnings of about 25,000 euros, you would have to have a pension fund of €500,000. In the States, you can do the same numbers. You want average earnings is $40,000, and you need a pension fund of $1 million to get that money. Now, average person, if they're lucky, has $50,000 or $60,000 or euros. So people haven't got the money, and also they don't need it.
So the outlook, the long-term outlook, is for sustained low growth rates for the industry.
Yes.
Say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We can be quite definite about this because we know who's been born today, and if people haven't been born today, you're not going to have them in the 25-year-old upwards peak wealth creator generation. For 20, you've got to start again. We're seeing a small upturn in the birth rates in some countries at the moment, but by comparison with where we were, it's trivial. So there's in that sense, there's nothing to look forward to. But if we were realistic for a moment, what we would say is, well, why are we so fixated on growth anyway? What is so great about using up all these resources? Weren't we the same people who were panicking over sustainability and everything else and what were we leaving to our children? So let's actually put two and two together here and say, there is a very interesting market now. You're looking at 35 to 40% of adult populations in the West and in the States now over 55. This generation has never existed in history before. Nobody is doing anything for their products and services for their needs, because these are not doddery old fools who are just about to sort of fall over and need a walking stick and then get taken to the hospital. These are active, interesting, lively people who do have needs for shelter, for mobility, and you can see that some companies out there are starting to think about what would be a business model for these people. They're coming up with some very interesting business models, more about sharing than ownership. So it won't do a lot for overall demand, but a more service-orientated market will produce good profits.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you, Will.